We are in the National Gallery in London and we are looking at John Bunyan's portrait of an finished wedding. The person who was represented here was an Italian merchant who worked in Bourges. Bourges was a thriving economic town in early 15th century. His wealth is quite apparent throughout this portrait. In a way, this portrait is about his wealth, everything from both the clothes to the furnishing of the house. Many things are included in this painting without any spaces, and the authenticity of various and subtle interpretations is questioned. But we do not need to care about it or spend the time on a curation. The reason is that the art has its origin in the miniature painting of the late Gothic period. The Flemish artists who were the first to popularize the use of oil paint, who had the habit of drawing on a small panel as a kind of obsession, come to mind. Lots of early Flemish painters are shown like this way when they face large spaces. The way his hands is up, perhaps he's just greeting the visitors who we see in the mirror. There are two people who are in the doorway. The mirror in the center is really one of the most compelling elements. Not only sense the great visual reality of this room defect, and we can actually see as if we are standing in a back of room scenes from the fashionable crisis. Those little round around the mirror, they are tiny, and yet we can make out what scenes from the fashionable crisis are represented there. There's that attention detail and detail painted in numerous quality that we associate with the Northern Renaissance. There are oranges which we can assume they will since it was very expensive in Flanders, and it looks as though the scene is taking place in what we think of as a bedroom in kind of private spaces, but in fact bedrooms were not that in the 15th century. They were rooms where received visitors, and there are all kind of symbols of wealth here. Look at the way that you see those teeny little girls in the green robes that she wear, that heavy. That's been frayed out. That was better fashionable. And there's a mistake that is often made, which is people often look at the sort of the birds of her belly and suggest that she is pregnant, but clearly, definitely she is not. This was very much an expression of the fashion of the day. All across Europe, the supreme art rose in prices and in statuary luxury objects made of a mixture of expensive materials. All works, no matter what their medium or purpose, have the same recognizable look and the same elegant style, advertises a person belonging to a certain. He was able to create a luminous quality, a richness of color that tempera simply couldn't achieve. He's doing this because he's applying thin, multiple layers or glazes of thinned out oil painting, so that each layer is translucent and layer after layer applied to create these incredibly deep, rich colors, which allows him to then produce this rich, luminous, incredibly subtle light, and move across the faces of the figure, their hands across the furniture. On the chandelier, the little shadow cast by that bottom bar of the window. There's a real love of light here that also is very typical of Northern Renaissance, but Ragov interested in human anatomy and the rational prospectively correct spaces really tell that we are not in the Italian Renaissance, we are in the Northern Renaissance. That love of texture, the use of oil painting, the attention to detail. John Bunyan is a master or the master of the Northern Renaissance.